Now, as the name of the video implies, this is part 13 of a story, which means this likely isn't going to make much sense to you if you haven't seen the first dozen episodes. So I'll include a link to all previous parts in the description below so you can either catch up first or check out the first episode to see if you like it and want to eventually make your way back here for this part. And now, without any further ado, let's get back to the story. We get a shot of the island of the first Jedi Temple, before we're taken to a rocky outcropping overlooking the ocean, where we see Anakin Skywalker standing with his eyes closed in deep thought or meditation. Suddenly then, there is a flash, and we see a hazy image of Padme Amidala, standing before an angry-looking ObiWan Kenobi, who raises a red saber above his head and brings it down upon her. And a moment later, we see Obi-Wan simply walking away from a trembling Padme, who then falls to her knees and cries over the charred remains of the Japper snippet Obi-Wan has just destroyed, and the one Anakin gave to her when they were children. There is then another flash, and now we see Padme at a different time and place, though the blurry nature of the vision makes it too difficult to tell just when and where, but we do see that she is clutching at an unseen hand around her throat, choking her. That's when Anakin's eyes suddenly shoot open, as we hear a female voice from behind him say, Master Skywalker, sorry to trouble you, but Master Dooku said you wanted to see me, says you've come to a decision? Anakin, after taking a few seconds to collect himself after the vision, then looks over his shoulder and sees standing behind him a rather eager and excited-looking Ahsoka Tano. Decision, he then says, back confused, giving a slight shake of the head. Then something dawns on him and he shuts his eyes for a moment and sighs before giving a small, apologetic smile. I'm sorry, Ahsoka. I'm not sure what Master Dooku told you, but I haven't come to any type of decision about choosing a Padawan. Ahsoka's head lowers, and her excitement instantly fades. I see, she says as she turns and starts to go. But Anakin then quickly says back, halting her for a moment, Hey, don't take it personally, Ahsoka. I just don't feel now is the time for me to take on a Padawan. It's just too dangerous right now. Ahsoka then turns around and snaps back, And when will be? Taken aback, Anakin says, Excuse me? When will be? Ahsoka again snaps back, before giving a coy little grin and saying, I mean, just when will be a good, safe time, Master Skywalker? As Jedi, won't we always be seeking out danger to try and help and save people? Wouldn't it be better for some of us to learn how to face these dangers in the company of a master rather than on our own? Anakin opens his mouth to respond to that, but quickly shuts it and just frowns. You've got a point, young one, he says, causing Ahsoka to give a small yet proud grin. Anakin continues, but right now isn't the time. But soon, I'll give it some real thought and make a decision. I promise you that. Ahsoka nods, gives a slight bow, and then walks away. We then switch scenes, and are taken into the Sith shrine far below the ruins of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. We're standing in the center of the circle of massive Sith statues, bathed in a crimson-red glow cast by the light coming from their eyes, stands a figure wearing the mask of Darth Revan. That's when we hear the echo of footsteps, and the figure wearing the Revan mask turns as two others, Darth Plagueis and Darth Sidious, approach walking side by side. And when they are but a few paces away from Revan, the two Sith Lords, who were once master and apprentice, exchange a quick look, before looking upon Revan and bowing their heads slightly and averting their gaze to the floor. Revan then nods slightly and approvingly and says, And thus it begins, the rise of a new Sith Empire. With his head still lowered, Plagueis then asks, We await your instructions, my lord and master. Once more, Revan's head nods, slightly before he says, We shall waste no time. Anakin Skywalker and any who follow him must be destroyed. His destruction assures the future of my empire. With their heads still lowered, we now see, once again, Plagueis and Sidious exchange a quick glance. We then switch scenes and get a shot of Dooku and Anakin walking together on one of the old worn stone paths on the island of the first Jedi Temple, and jump into the middle of a conversation between them and hear Anakin say, I'm sorry, Master, I have to go. This is my last chance to save her. Dooku seems to consider that for a long moment before replying, You used to say that, in these visions, it was you who would kill Padme. Anakin nods. I know, that's because I've been reading them wrong all this time. It's not me who kills Padme, not directly. Anakin pauses and seems to be holding back a smile as he says, She still cares about me, Master. That's what gets her killed. And that's why I have to go to her now. Dooku sighs and then says, And what if you're reading this new vision wrong, Anakin? Remember what happened the last time you trusted too much in these visions of yours. We then see Anakin shut his eyes tight and get a flash before seeing a rapid series of images from Tatooine many years ago. And among them are Maul swinging a saber at the neck of Shmi Skywalker and plunging that same saber into the chest of Qui-Gon Jinn. The vision then ends with Owen Lars cradling the body of his father Klieg, while Beru stands nearby watching their home burn. Anakin's eyes open and he says, "I know I was wrong that time, but I was young then, barely trained. I understand the Force so much better now, what it wants from me and what my place is. Besides, we should have gone back and saved Padme when I said we should have, because now she has somehow helped turn Obi-Wan into something dark." Dooku eyes Anakin keenly for a long moment. "You're letting your emotions for her cloud your judgment. Emotions, I'm surprised, haven't faded away over time." Anakin shakes his head. "No, Master, it's not about my emotions for her." He then pauses and grins at a look he's getting from Dooku and starts over. "Okay, it's not just about my emotions, but something else too. I don't know why, but Padme must live. Everything depends on it. And if I don't save her now, right now, ObiWan Kenobi will destroy her. I know this to be true." Dooku stops walking and Anakin stops as well. Dooku then says after a long, quiet moment of thought, "And if you go to Coruscant, if you go to save Padme, what happens if you encounter Kenobi there and are forced to confront him and this great darkness you say he is becoming? Are you ready to face such a test alone?" Anakin quickly shakes his head. "He won't be there. I've foreseen it. He won't be." Dooku frowns. "And if your vision is wrong?" Again, Anakin shakes his head. "It's not." Once more, Dooku is quiet and in deep thought. Finally he says, "If you choose to do this, you will not do it alone." Anakin quickly shakes his head and says, "Master, it's not wise for both of us to leave the island, especially with Master Yaddle currently gone and in search of more younglings." Dooku shakes his head and smiles. "No, it would not be wise. That's why it won't be me who goes with you." For a brief moment, Anakin looks confused, but before he can protest, Dooku says, "Ahsoka truly would be my top choice for you, Anakin, but I suppose Caleb or Barriss would also make fine Padawans." Anakin shakes his head. "Now's not the time. This mission is too dangerous." Dooku's brow raises. "Oh, but you say Kenobi will not be there, and I dare say the last thing anyone in search of you would expect is for you to return to Coruscant after all these years." Anakin still looks skeptical, and like he's about to argue, but Dooku says first, "Anakin, I have trained them the best I could, and my time here on this island, instructing them, has brought me a peace I never thought I could know. But the only way for them to truly become Jedi is to begin to face the challenges that will test them for the rest of their lives. And whoever you pick now to be your Padawan will likely sit beside you on a new council one day, and they will stand beside you for the rest of your days, because that is the nature of the unbreakable bond you enter into when you choose a Padawan." We then quickly switch scenes and get a shot of Yoda once again standing before the dark side cave on Dagobah. We then see that standing behind him is the Force ghost of Bastila, and to her Yoda says, "Certain you are that ready I now am." Bastila gives one resolute nod of the head before saying, "You must be. My husband Revan has put his final plans into motion, and destroying this place will not only aid those who fight him here in life, but aid you and I and Qui-Gon when we fight him within the Force." Yoda's head then lowers, and he shuts his eyes before saying, "See part of this plan of his I do. Alone my Padawan Dooku will face 3 Sith Lords. In great peril his students and new Jedi Order are." Again, Bastila gives a resolute nod of the head. "It is impossible to see the outcome of this day. There are always so many futures, and the Force is always in motion. But I do foresee that Anakin, the Chosen One, will survive, and that is all that matters." Yoda's eyes open, and there is the slightest bit of anger there as he says, "All that matters to you, perhaps. Watch I had to, as my order was destroyed. The same fate my Padawan Dooku now faces." Bastila then eyes him for a long moment before turning her gaze to the cave and saying, "If you have any hopes of succeeding in there, you must let go of all attachment. In that cave, the dark side will sense any and all of your fears, and if you hold on to but one of them, including what the fate of your old Padawan may or may not be, you will fail, and the dark side will only grow stronger." Yoda's head nods, and using his cane, he begins to shuffle forward towards the cave as he says, "Fear not. Understand I do what must be done, and fail no one will I." The scene then slowly fades away, as we watch Yoda enter the cave and disappear into darkness. And as we slowly fade back in, we are now focused in on the mask of Darth Revan, and as we pull back and away from it, we see that he sits in what appears to be the cockpit of a small ship flying through hyperspace. That's when there is a flash, and we see a blurry vision of the island of the First Jedi Temple, and see Revan flanked by two other dark-robed warriors wielding red lightsabers. And we can just make out that those figures are Darth Sidious and Darth Plagueis, and the only one standing to oppose them is Jedi Master Dooku. That's when there is another flash, and we're back in the cockpit and see an angry-looking ObiWan Kenobi yank the mask of Revan off and set it down on the console in front of him, and he seems to say to it, "Where is he? Why is he not there? 100 times I've had that vision, and each time Anakin has been there until now." Obi-Wan then slams a fist down on the console, and that's when we see form behind him the shadowy visage of Darth Revan, who then says, "Search your feelings, Kenobi, and you will know where he has gone." Obi-Wan shakes his head and fires back, "But how would I know where?" But as he's saying it, something seems to click in his head, and he puts the mask of Revan back on and punches at some buttons on the console, and a few moments later, on the view screen, the image of both Plagueis and Sidious appears, and Revan says to them, "Continue on to the coordinates I have given you and destroy any and all Jedi you encounter there. My Mandalorian fleet will meet you there to form a blockade around the planet to make sure no ships get out of the system. Is that understood?" Before either of them can even answer, Revan hits another button on the console and their images disappear from the view screen. Revan then immediately springs to his feet, rips the mask off his head, and throws it as hard as he can at the ground. That's when Obi-Wan says, "I cannot do it without your help. I cannot defeat Anakin without you or them." The shadowy image of Revan, which forms just behind Obi-Wan, then says, "You must. I cannot aid you against them." Obi-Wan then spins around and faces him and says, "Why? What is it about him you fear so much?" Revan fires back, "Fear? No, it's not fear that keeps me from destroying him." Obi-Wan shrugs and almost chuckles before saying, "Then what is it? Why don't we just destroy him together? He wouldn't stand a chance against us." The shadowy figure of Revan turns and walks a few steps away before saying, "He is protected from me by someone whom I have a bond with." Obi-Wan seems to think for a moment before saying, Bastila Shan, your wife." The visage of Revan turns and Obi-Wan says, "What? You didn't think you'd spent all that time in my head without me having visions of your life and learning much about you, did you?" The image of Revan says nothing, and Kenobi continues, "You think I don't know you want to destroy me, that due to a bond with Anakin you somehow don't understand, you cannot fully return yet." Still Revan says nothing, and Kenobi finishes, "What fascinates me, however, is that you truly haven't figured it all out yet. Or is that not it at all? Maybe you have figured it all out. Why Bastila protects Anakin, but don't want to admit it to yourself, that you're now willing to see your own son killed to gain unlimited power." The visage of Revan snaps back, "He is not my son." Kenobi, unfazed by Revan's sudden anger, simply says back, "So you have realized it all along, and now you want me to kill him for you?" The visage of Revan raises a clenched fist and says, "If I could destroy him, I would, but she protects him from me, thanks to the bond that still exists between us." Obi-Wan then says, "But Bastila cannot protect Anakin from just poor old me, can she? Problem is, I'm not really so sure that I can defeat Anakin without your help. Dooku has no doubt trained him well." Revan then replies, "Are you really that weak, Kenobi? So weak that you could not get vengeance for your dead wife, Satine, by killing the one responsible for her death? So weak that you'll let Anakin walk into your home, even now, and steal another love away from you, right under your nose? Is that the kind of weak, foolish man you are, Kenobi?" We then focus in on the scarred face of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and when it begins to tremble with anger, and as his eyes begin to turn yellow, is when we switch scenes, and we now find ourselves looking at a weeping Padme Amidala as she sits on a sofa in her apartment, clutching the remains of the Japper snippet Anakin gave her to her chest. That's when we hear some commotion from another part of the apartment, which sounds like blaster fire and the sounds of lightsabers swinging, before Anakin Skywalker, wielding his blue lightsaber, bursts into the room, followed soon after by Ahsoka Tano. Immediately, Padme gets to her feet and locks eyes with Anakin, and the look of disbelief on her face is soon replaced by pure joy, Anakin, not taking his eyes off Padme, then says over his shoulder, "Watch the door, Ahsoka, and make sure none of the guards we knocked out wake up." Ahsoka nods, takes one look at Padme, and then says, "You got it, Master." As soon as Ahsoka turns to go, Anakin deactivates his saber, simply drops it, and quickly marches towards Padme, while she runs at him, and the two quickly find themselves in each other's arms. It's Padme who starts by saying, "I'm so sorry, Anakin. I betrayed you and all the Jedi by testifying against you in the Senate. This whole war with the Mandalorians is my fault." But Anakin shakes his head and seems to hold her even tighter as he says, "No, we should have never come here all those years ago to hide out. And then, after the Mandalorians found us and attacked, we just left you behind when we should have come back for you. All of this was my fault, Padme, not yours." For a very long moment, the two are silent and just hold each other, until Padme pulls back and away from him and looks at Anakin with almost confusion on her face. "What is it?" Anakin asks, looking concerned. "That's what I'm trying to figure out," Padme replies. "What is it about you? Why has it always been you? I've been with Obi-Wan for years. I've loved him even. But you've always been there in my heart." Anakin smiles and nods. "It's been the same for me, and I don't know why either. Not a day goes by that I haven't thought about you, Padme." The two embrace again, and Padme whispers as she shuts her eyes tight, "Now what do we do?" But Anakin shakes his head and says, "For just one moment, and for hopefully not the last time in my life, I just don't want to have to worry about it or anything else." Padme smiles, and the two again fall silent, as the scene then shifts, and we see Ahsoka standing in the hallway outside Padme's apartment, just as a dark-robed figure comes around the corner down the hall, and as it marches towards her, it ignites a red-bladed lightsaber, which is when we see Ahsoka swallow back her fear, ignite her two sabers, and raise them in a reverse grip. And as the figure gets closer, we see that it is, of course, ObiWan Kenobi, and when he gets just a few paces away from Ahsoka, he raises his saber and says with a dark smile upon his face, "Hello there. I don't believe we've been introduced." We then switch scenes and get a shot of the island of the First Jedi Temple before we get a shot of a stern-looking Dooku looking down upon two of his students, and he says to them, "Now, Barriss and Caleb, I'm putting you two in charge of the other students. Take them deep into the tunnels below the island and to the ship we have hidden there, and if you don't hear from me soon, you know what to do. Master Yoda will meet you at the emergency rendezvous point. Understood?" Both Barriss and Caleb nod their heads just as a small, black, wedge-shaped ship flies overhead and begins to descend to make a landing on the island. Dooku gives them one nod, and the two run off, and for a long moment, Dooku watches them with a faint, peaceful smile upon his face. But as he turns, just as the ship touches down, the smile vanishes, and the look on his face is now calm and confident, as he begins to walk towards the dark vessel. That's when the ramp to the ship lowers, and down that ramp walks both Darth Plagueis and Darth Sidious. And still looking calm, Dooku walks right up to both of them, takes hold of his saber and ignites it, and does a quick flourish with it before looking at Plagueis and saying, "I've been looking forward to this." Both Sith Lords then ignite their sabers, and it's Plagueis who says, "Fool, then you have been looking forward to your own demise. For what hope do you have of defeating us alone, Jedi?" To that, Dooku only smiles, and his gaze goes from the Sith Lords to a small mound of rocks. Both Sith Lords also look towards the rocks, just as Master Yoda emerges from behind them and says, "Alone, he is not." And that is where this part ends. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you thought of this part of the story, and what you think is going to happen next. So until next time, thanks for watching.